Today, we're going to be learning about linked lists. So as you can see, my screen's a little bit different. Typically, it's, sort of like a whiteboard software, but today I'm actually coding in IntelliJ. So what I'm going to just begin with is just creating a linked list. I feel like that's just, code along and then teach y'all. So when y'all want to create like a linked list, so first you have to import it, but like IntelliJ does it automatically, I believe. But then you'd write linked list with both L's, capitalized in it. And then you get these like greater than, like less than sign. And in that you'd write whatever type you want to store. So if you want to store strings, you would store type strings. If you wanted to store integers, you would store type integers. So whatever you want to store, like a specific type, like, I don't know, integers, doubles, strings, whatever you want to type it in these two little greater than less than sign. And then you come up with a name. So since I might want to, keep in charge of food items. Okay. And then you'd put an equal sign, and then you'd write new linked list. And again, in these two signs, you'd put whatever you were storing earlier with. So right here, you have just created a new linked list, right? We first wrote linked list. I feel like you got the general idea. Now, you're like, okay, we've created a linked list, but now what do we do with this linked list? So you can do multiple things. Most probably what you want to do is maybe add some things. So I would do food items dot add, I don't know, burger. So maybe another item I'd like to add would be French fries. Good. Right? And then I could print this print statement I have here, food items. And now let's run it. Okay, yeah, I did add burger and French fries. But maybe, you know what? I want to add apples. Okay. But I typically eat my apples during breakfast time, so I would like to add that in before to show that, oh, that's what I typically eat. So let me put 1 and apples. Here. Print it. And if you notice is that apples wasn't our first item, but was our second. And the reason for that is just like how an array, our index is typically begins with 0. That's the same with linked lists. So you would always put your index at 0. So now if I run it, I should see, okay, now I see my apples, then burger and French fries. So this is how I, add something, but then this is how I can change it as well. This is one instance of changing it though. If I want, then I can actually remove an item. So maybe I do not want to eat French fries. No, we just don't want French fries. No, I run it. And French fries is gone. Okay, that's sweet. So we just did really like simple things in a linked list, right? Adding items, maybe changing the position of an item right here, and then removing it. And that's it. But what if maybe I want to iterate through this linked list? Create a for loop. You create a variable. And then here I'd say if I is less than the size of my linked list, food items, then keep on going with this for loop. So this is a very basic structure of a for loop here. And right now I just want to, maybe easy. So maybe I just like to print each food item along the way in my linked list. So here I'd have, okay, right, and then I'd put food items dot, we would get, and then here I would print I. And now when I run it, here I have it separately mentioned, apples in a new line, and then burger. Reasons, this is basically a method of a linked list, right? And basically this gets the index of each item. So base index. So here I basically, I'm in a for loop, so the index changes with every iteration. So that's why we get apples and burgers. And since I'm printing it, that's why I can see it in my text console. Here, if I, instead of starting my whole linked list, if I just print food items dot get 0, then here I'd have it, apples separately. So you can either have a number, just 0, 1, just a stored value, or you can have a variable, that keeps on changing over time, right? So this was 0, but then in the next iteration it became 1. So it always changes. But there's also another way of writing this for loop. So I can just simply write for string x or something, I don't know, doesn't really matter, and then write food items, and then I'll just have to out x. And then when we check that works as well. And I mean, in a way, you could say, oh, it's a lot easier than, getting and stuff. But it doesn't matter which way you write the for loop, you get the same result. In this instance, what we just did is instead of an index running and, adding, we just oh, there's a string, goes through food items, it's printed. So that's pretty much it. Now I do want to get to methods of in linked lists and stuff. Okay. So before I wrap up this video, I just want to mention a couple of other methods which I didn't mention above here in this code. First off, method, it's exactly what it sounds like. Linked list, the dot clear method. So basically my linked list name and dot clear. And it basically empties your array list. All right. So here I basically cleared it, and now I'll print it, and now there will be no elements over here which I added. So yeah. Okay. So here we go. Here we see that it's completely empty. All this code is just from the code I wrote above here. Okay. Then there's another method called if. Not if, that's just, an if else statement, but basically it's the dot contains method. And this method is actually quite useful, especially when you start to make more complex programs. Reason being, because if I ever want to compare whether or not does this linked list contain this item, then you can do whatever you want to do with it. So maybe if it contains apples, then I would maybe like to add bananas as well. And I would like to print that I love fruits. So because, and then if this statement evaluates to true, then this will happen. Otherwise, it won't. So now I print it over here. Oh, and this is already cleared. So see, so since this was cleared, that meant that apples wasn't here, right? Because all the elements were deleted. And that's the reason why that this condition didn't happen, because this condition was false. Now, when I delete this and the linked list is no longer clear, then we'll see that this is true. And then we get the statement, I love fruits. And then if I print food items, then I'll also see bananas being added, right? Bananas is added as well. So our last method is the clone method. And you know what? I'm just going to delete all of the code where, I'm just printing a lot of stuff. Actually, food items. But basically, the clone method is basically if we want to create a copy of a linked list. And that's when the clone method comes in. So, you're like, we have just created a list of 3 items. Like, what's the harm of adding in 3 more items? But this method is, more useful. Imagine you had a linked list of 500 items. Now, would you create another linked list and add 500 items, right? And imagine I only wanted to change one of them. Would you really want to add 500 items just so you can change one? So we don't want to do that. So that's why we create a linked list, a copy using the clone method. And then we can use the add method and, where we can put in our index and then our element. And then that would make us, get the same results in a much more efficient way. But how would we do that? So similarly here, we had created a linked list here, and declared what type was it. So here we would write linked list. And then but this time you won't add what type of it. You just write in the name. So maybe it's a bad name, but food items 2. And then I'd write new linked list. And there we go. But we are not done yet. Then I would get my food items 2. And then this is the part where I'm saying clone it. So then dot clone. Dot clone. Oh, and then remember to put linked list over here. This is very crucial. Otherwise, if you don't put linked list in parentheses, just like how I forgot like a couple of seconds ago, then you will not be able to clone it. But you'd write the name of your linked list, which is food items 2. Then you'd put in parentheses linked list. And then you'd put the name of your original linked list, which you want to copy, and write dot clone. So now I'll print it and I'll actually do food items 2, just so we know, okay, that's the one which is printing, and put food items 2. And now here we have it. This is food items, and then I printed food items 2 just to make sure it's different. And then we get the same list of apples and burgers. Now, maybe if I want to add food items 2, a new element, okay, strawberries. I think the worst food items, but it's fine. And then now I would maybe like to print food items 2, and then also print food items here 1. And now we can see here that we have added strawberries, but that didn't affect our original linked list of food items, as strawberries is not added here. And that's the beauty of this clone method, is that the second list, you can add or delete whatever you want to do without the first list being affected. I'm going to go over the difference between a linked list and an array list. So an array list is actually really similar to a linked list. Like if I want to create a linked list, it's almost the same way, but instead of writing linked list, I'd write array list. And similarly, I can add items, remove items, and all the fun stuff that we did with linked list, I can do it with array list as well. But there are some differences which come along, and it's more on how they work. Like it's not like Java and you're typing code along, but it's just sort of like more behind the scenes of how linked list differs from array list. So we're back to our whiteboard again. But here I have ArrayList and LinkedList example. So here in ArrayList, I've basically mentioned some numbers, and here I've just mentioned their indexes. So an ArrayList basically is what we call dynamic array, whereas a linked list uses a double linked. Okay, yeah. It's like right here-ish. It's like a double linked list. So first off, I'm going to start off with the array list. And I'll show that how it's used. So basically, if I want to insert a new number, 24, maybe I want to insert it at index 3, okay? Just right in the middle of the array list. So I would basically take this, and now 19 is no longer at index 3, right? It's 24, and 19 would be at index 4. Then 21 would go over here, and it would be at index 5. Then 24 would come over here, and it would be at index 6. And then 30 would be pushed here to an index 7. So basically, it just, whenever one number is pushed in, then all the numbers go down one index as well. Now, it doesn't seem as complicated, right? Because we pushed starting from index 3 and then went to index 7. But imagine if we had 500 numbers and we wanted to push a 24 in index 3. That's going to take a really long time. So that's why we consider ArrayList to be much slower when we want to manipulate ArrayList, right? Because currently I'm trying to manipulate it because right now I already had these original set of numbers, and then I was changing, oh, actually, no, I want to change the 24 here. Whereas in a linked list, here we have a double list, and these are our nodes. I do want to mention that this would be previous, and this would be next. So P and an N. And basically, how a double linked list works is that the next number after 9, and actually I'll just label P and for all of them, is, okay, I see that next of 9 is 15, and the previous of 15 would be 9. That's why it's called double linked, right? Because we have next and then we have previous. Then here we see that the next of 15 is 16, and the previous of 16 would be 15, and goes on, right? If we would just imagine with all the rest of our array list as well. But maybe now I want to insert 24 at index 1, right? As our second number. Okay, so now the next number is no longer 9. I mean, 9 no longer goes to 15. The next number for 9 would be 24. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to erase this. Actually, you know what? Just erase these lines. Okay, we'll do it from here. So now next would be here. Then next of 15 would be here. And then of 16, previous, this is, since this is the first number, there is no previous, but previous would go over here, right? Because now 15 comes after 24. So the previous number before 15 was 24. Then the previous number before 24, like the number before 24 was 9. So this previous number go right over here. So right, you can see the flow. Oh, and then the number before 16 was 15. It's right over here. But now when you imagine, suppose if now I had maybe like a linked list of like 500 numbers, only this flow would get disturbed. All the numbers after that would go smoothly, right? Just like how we can see that 15 and 16 still went like smoothly. So that's why if you want to change a number, all of a sudden, or, then that's when you should use linked list because it's much quicker. But now, how we mentioned while we were programming and we mentioned the .get method. Maybe if I just want to get a number, I don't want to change my array list, but I just want to access all the numbers in the list or one of the numbers in the list. So maybe I want to get the number 5. Then I would just, program, and we can easily, it would just not search for every index. It would just go to index 5 and retrieve it. Or whereas in the linked list, it would go through each number like a linear search, and it would go 9. This is okay. It would go begin with that number, then go, oh no, and then it would finally search for its 5th number. So that's where array lists are better because you can access your numbers and elements better than you would in a linked list. So both have their own pros and cons, but I think it's just, what do you think? When do you need to use it? Array lists are most of the time much popular idea because you're probably going to be accessing more elements than manipulating. So that's why array lists are more common than linked list. Linked list, yeah, we might want to manipulate it, but not that much. But that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed and learned about linked list and enjoyed and understood the difference between an array and a linked list as well. So see y'all next time. Bye.